So how do we talk about sustainability while also thinking about creating pathways out of poverty? And so before the term green collar job or green collar economy ever started flying around, she created the BEST program. And that is the Bronx Environmental Stewardship Training Program. That is a 14-week program that is free to anybody in the New York City area. It teaches everything from horticulture to dam restoration, to solar paneling, to basic construction. They then work with the people who come into the program for at least 3 years. You're tracked for at least 3 years. There are referrals, outhouse referrals, that deal with a lot of these issues because a lot of the people that are coming in there are looking for a second chance. They've been denied access to many other traditional routes of getting an education, or they have barriers that exist. If I have a child, I mean, I was lucky enough that I had the support that I was able to get through school while raising a family as a single mother. But it's very rare. I know many people who tried it and just were not able to, many of my neighbors, and you continue to perpetuate this cycle. So what happens when you have a child and you've known nothing but the cycle of welfare and you don't have a lot of soft skills? Well, this is the program that's going to make sure that they fast track you and teach you those things in a real and genuine and successful and efficient way. What happens if you have an issue with recidivism? I've been in the underground. Recidivism is continually going into the prison pipeline. Right? So what happens when you've been incarcerated? And then there are, in my opinion, irrefutable barriers that exist to deliberately keep people, especially black males, out of the mainstream population who have formerly been incarcerated. If I've been incarcerated for a drug-related felony, just a drug-related felony, I don't know how many people remember filling out their FAFSA. There's a question that says, have you ever been convicted of a drug-related felony? If you have, that's it. That's the end of your FAFSA. You will not receive federal funding. That, to me, is a barrier that is going to further criminalize people. If I've ever been convicted of a drug-related felony and I have a mother, brother, sister, child who lives in New York public housing, I cannot visit them. Or my family member, if found out that I have been there, will be evicted from the premises. That further criminalizes people. And these types of structures that drive them back into the underground economy. Right? I did a short film with the BEST graduates, and I was talking to men who had been incarcerated for 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, and they talk about how they went to get jobs at McDonald's, and as soon as they relayed that they had been convicted of a crime, at first, maybe it was like, maybe it's just coincidence, but they talk about 6, 7, 8, 9 months, not even being able to get a job at a movie theater, and they knew it was because they had checked that little box that said they had been convicted of a felony. This program, you had men who came in who were kind of like, so yeah, I did some time. And without blinking an eye, Annette, who's the director, said, okay. She calls parole officers routinely. She stays in touch with the welfare workers. We have created a structure at Sustainable South Bronx that deals with some of these real issues while giving people soft skills to go forward and get green collar jobs. And it's not just about getting them a job. It is something about getting a job that creates a more sustainable community, because when you think about the relationship between the lack of green spaces, sort of the asphalt all over, you know, dilapidated buildings, when you talk to the people who've come to the BEST program who've been nurtured in these types of environments, they talk about the sort of effects that it took on them, and they didn't realize that it took those effects on them until they actually started to put on waders and get into the water, until they actually started to fix the dam. There are people who live in the Bronx and do not know that the Bronx has a river. And they're like, really, we do? What's it called? And I'm like, the Bronx River. Like, they don't know that it exists, right? When Majora created the Hunts Point Riverside Park, there were so many tires in the river, she didn't realize it was there. Her dog accidentally took her there, and she thought it was an illegal dumping ground for both industry and residential. And it was only after sort of surveying the area that she realized she actually was at waterfront property, because it was just so denigrated and just so neglected. And that became, a couple of years later, became an actual staple of the community. It is one of the most beautiful parks in the South Bronx. But coincidentally, it is shoved between two gigantic recycling centers, and kids routinely jump off of the pier into the water, and right next to them is maybe 15, 16 feet in the air, probably more than that. Probably, I would say probably like a 5-story building of just garbage and gigantic cranes. What do you think happens to that when it rains more than an inch? All that storm runoff, it runs right into the river. And those kids, because they know nothing else, and they're just so happy to have a park that has a pier, will routinely take off all their clothes and jump right into that river. And so these are the types of issues that we're dealing with. Even when we have something good, there's still sort of the negative impact around it. We've had to create these safe spaces amidst industry. And so Majora and SSB have really been at the helm of creating green collar jobs. And we have to be very careful about that as well, because one of the things that happens, especially with people of color, and particularly right now with the immigrant population, is that they become the backbone of the labor-intensive workforce, but they never really get the opportunity to sort of be the management team, to be the entrepreneurs. And so we've thought about not just getting people green collar jobs, but stimulating the green collar economy by creating green collar careers. And so then last year, in collusion with MIT, we created the Green Fab Lab. So we have John Santiago, who is our Fab Lab coordinator, and Fab Lab just stands for Fabrication Laboratory. And he routinely does workshops with kids in the area as well as adults in the area, showing them computer-assisted design and using that to do what was before really thought of as traditional manufacturing, using computer-assisted design and really using this as an incubator for small business, so that you have people in the community who think about possibly opening up sustainable furniture, stores, or possibly doing sustainable trophies. We have got a lot. I'm in a Latino community. We got a lot of Little League baseball teams. So making these sort of connections, right? You laugh, but it's very true. That really can only come from someone who's sort of intimately involved in the area, and you being able to tap into those resources, seeking out the people like myself who live in these areas who can tell you that kind of information. Like, I live in a Latino community. We have baseball. I've never seen a place where they play baseball all year round. And this is most of our green spaces are dedicated to baseball, because there's a culture that's steeped in that appreciates that. And so then making that connection, that if we're talking about creating a small incubator for business, we've actually had people who've thought about saying, hey, I probably could start a very successful local trophy, trophy business and use sustainable materials. And that is a very creative yet reasonable way to think about that. And the fact that we're smack dab up against all of that industry, thinking about getting donations or, drastically reduced prices from them. So talking about reuse. We also have other, we have Rebuilders Source, which is also in that community, that does things like that. They reuse things. They take what generally would be garbage, they rehab it, and they sell it to people in the community at a drastically discounted price. So it becomes sort of like the hood Home Depot. And so people go there and they get these cabinets that have been sanded and repainted and all of this stuff using sustainable materials from the time that they rehab it, from the cleaning products all the way up to the actual refinishing. And then for those who have worked very hard, who got their houses through HUD, who want to do renovation, but especially in this time cannot afford to do thousands of dollars in renovations, who cannot get a loan, this is a very practical way of doing that for them. And then when you look at organizations like Mothers on the Move, which is much more community-based, they're the ones who go into the community and recruit people to actually become the soldiers in leading this movement. They go out and they get people from the community. They do door knocking and canvassing, and they get people to come in and mobilize. And they've been thinking about ways, they've been working with organizations like Sustainable South Bronx in terms of sustainability. And they teach people to do the press releases, to talk with the elected officials. They stage the actions.